Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Facade Pod. You've got Mitch and Matt here today with a really fun guest that we're excited to talk to, Ray Crawford with Crawford-Tracey Corporation. Ray, how are you this morning?
I'm good. Thanks for asking, Mitch.
Well, thank you very much for coming on with us. You come highly recommended, and we're excited to talk to you today. So, just for everybody out there, could you just introduce yourself, Ray, and what you do?
Okay, yeah, my name is Ray Crawford, President of Crawford-Tracey Corporation. Crawford-Tracey Corporation basically is a family-owned business. My father started it when I was more like knee-high to a grasshopper, and I kind of wasn't going to go into the business, and eventually did, and have been in the company for well over 50 years now.
Wow. And so it was, yeah, I was gonna say you said you weren't gonna go into the company, but then you did. Did Papa strong arm you in or bring rope you in? How'd you get in?
No, no, actually, it was funny because as we all know, when we're young, our parents are just so dumb. They just don't understand anything. And it was really funny. The older I got, the more I figured out the smarter my dad was. And I ended up, wasn't going to do it. I went out and started with a aluminum window company because I did like the industry. But then as I got into that, I ended up coming back and joining the Crawford Tracy organization.
I think that's the way to do it, is to go get your own experience first and then come back. We've a handful of people that we've talked to that have done something similar. That seems to be a good way to go about it, where you leave the family for a bit and then come back and come back into the fold.
Yeah, well, Mitch, you've got to go out and you've got to experience the other side of life, even though it looks greener. It's not, and not for the free ride, but the value, the ethics, and everything that our family organization had, I had learned to cherish, and I didn't see that in a lot of the other groups.
Sure. Sure. So can you tell us about what your role looks like now? What your role in Crawford Tracy is, and how what you're doing on a day to day?
Oh, yes. Back in 1992, just before Hurricane Andrew, I turned into and was charged to be the president of Crawford Tracy. I've been doing that ever since then. During that time, as president of the company, I've been more involved in the development of new products, the testing, and all of the specialty challenge that we see, and tried to get an insight on how it's evolving. What do we need to do to stay up with it? So, just like recently, our system, our Protect 9 and Protect 7 SG, we saw more and more of a need and desire for flood barrier components. So we went out and tested the 9 and the 7, and we're continuing to expand it. And we just received the FM Global 2510 approval for those two systems. We've tested on the 9 up to 7 foot of water, and the 7SG up to 4 foot of water. And we're getting inundated with contacts and questions about it because unlike the couple systems that are out there that are strictly punched openings made out of angles and channels and plates, this is a conventional fixed glazing and curtain wall system that can do hurricane impact, large missile, small missile, missile. It can do blast resistance. Now it can do hurricane and flood impact. So it's got everything.
So now, how are you guys determining that this is a need in the market? Is it based on your conversations with your customers? Is it based on an intuition? How are you deciding where to go with this?
It's a multitude of things, Mitch. It is the customers asking, watching the news, and this really became an issue back in what they called Superstorm Sandy up in the Northeast. And that is a big area that we're getting a lot of questions and curious calls about, can you do this? Can you look at this job? Can you give us a price? Because up there, it wasn't even a full-blown hurricane, and they're seeing more and more conditions of flooding. Out in the Midwest, they're seeing flooding. Even down from Hurricane Irma, that did not hit directly Miami-Dade County. Dade County and South Broward had some considerable flooding from where the ocean and Key Biscayne come up over the area. Actually, we had finished a hospital just before that, a hardening of the Mercy Hospital down in Miami, and it's on the bay. And they sent us a video and called us afterwards and advised us that they had waves and tides up over our windows, and nothing came through the windows, and they withstood it all. We got calls right after Hurricane Ian from the west coast of Florida that was destroyed. Some of our customers called and said, Ray, it's amazing. Thank you so much. All of your glass withstood all the flood. They had 3 and 4 foot of standing water up against it. They were in the house. They were scared to death, but the glazing didn't fail. That, along with everything else, we said it'll do it. So we tested it with a little bit thicker glass, put a little more reinforcing in it, and we were able to achieve and get the FM Global approval as a typical system with mullions, and we've actually got a patent pending on that.
Wow. Yeah, it's so interesting. Other than having years and years of experience, how does someone go about developing a system that it doesn't exist? What's step one in figuring out how to develop a new system like that?
Well, being in the business, and we started this back in the late 60s and early 70s, we were seeing problems with performance, quality control issues, and the design of all of the typical systems back in those days. The typical systems, and there's still a lot of the manufacturers that go for pressure equalized or rain screen as barriers. If they can get to 12 PSF and miraculously 15 PSF of water resistance, they're prouder than the game rooster. But technically, for what we do, that's absolutely nothing. During the hurricane process, whenever Andrew came through, we decided that they were talking, we met with the code authority, starting to implement a impact rated glazing system. We didn't have, Texas Tech was the only facility with the hurricane impact cyclic chamber and everything, so we weren't able to do that. So what we started doing is we took one of our cranes out back, we put a guy wire and eye bolts, and we started dropping 2x4s onto the surface of the glass to see what would initially bear and serve as impact. After that, when we started, the only way we could do the cyclic was take big vacuum units and with valves and make our own manual test chamber. A little cumbersome, but we were getting basic results and seeing the failures. The PVBs under those pressures, those conditions, were stretching, scissoring, and failing. The 2x4 was going through. So we ended up testing other products. We tested glass-clad polycarbonates, which were immense, and they were doing a phenomenal job. So we were working to bring that to market. We worked with Viricon very closely on that. And then a company called Romag came into the area and also introduced glass-clad polycarbonate. However, in the marketplace and in use, it didn't take long to find out that the polycarbonate on an exterior application with the coefficient of expansion, the problems, it was crazing, it was cracking, it was failing. So we worked DuPont came in at that time, back about 94, and presented their Century 457, which was a refab of their small shield, which was an exposed polymer. It was a PVB with a plastic on the front, and then a braid resistant coating that went on top of that. That worked for probably 4 or 5 years, and everybody, including ourselves, were hesitant about it because the exposed plastics on the interior was not a good thing. That's when DuPont came up with the ionoplast, which was a Century glass, so we could do a glass on glass laminate, and we tested that and brought that to market, and that has continued to evolve, has been the first phase of the large missile. PVBs is what we started with on the small missile. Now the ionoplast and the other products that are coming into the market are serving on the small missile configuration. Then the code and the facilities came up with essential facilities or shelters that they want to protect further than the standard 50 foot per second, 9.5 pound 2x4. And they came up with what is an E-missile. That's the ANSI claim on it. And we found that the 090 SGP wouldn't stop the 2x4 at the, if you will, 80 feet per second. The 2x4 would go through it. So Century Glass DuPont came up with the double 090, which is a 180 inner layer, and that was the first product that we were able to get to market to comply with the E-missile requirements. And it gave what we call a passive protection, especially for healthcare, that every time an imminent storm was coming, they didn't have to go out and put shutters or specialty requirements on the outside of the building to protect.
It's unbelievable how much you guys have to deal with in that Florida market. You know, we see a little bit of it up here in the Northeast. There's some hurricane consideration up here, but nothing like what you guys see on a daily basis.
Well, in addition to that, as we've discussed, blast resistant came into play. The Department of Defense has projects, some of their customs and their facilities, they wanted additional protection. So we went out to Texas and tested for blast. Did that, we found out that the Century glass would provide blast protection. We've done some of the facilities for the government, and we also provided blast in unison with a company down in Puerto Rico for the new federal building down in Puerto Rico. And now with the new flood, we can, by incorporating the correct glass in the appropriate reinforced frame, we can give flood, blast, hurricane impact, even E-missile impact to a single facility, or singularly the flood, the blast, or the hurricane impact. So it makes it versatile. We try and keep, being a manufacturer and an installer, we try and keep all this in mind so that we can have the versatility. We don't have to keep retesting.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of different, that sounds like that system fills a lot of different puzzle pieces depending on the project, you know. So with that, you've given us a little bit of an idea of the history and kind of the evolving of Crawford-Tracey here. Can you just give just a quick synopsis of, you know, who Crawford-Tracey is in terms of your geography and the types of projects you go after, things like that?
Okay. Crawford-Tracey Corporation, our main facility is located down in Southeast Florida. It's located in Deerfield Beach, Florida. We moved here in '92 from Fort Lauderdale. We also have a decent size, it's 24,000 square feet up in Jacksonville, and we're doing the Northeast Florida, Panhandle, the areas, and we share resources when we're doing healthcare or other projects in the Central Florida area. We also do a lot of work in Puerto Rico. We've done healthcare hardening and new and add-ons down in Puerto Rico. We've done projects in Louisiana, Texas, throughout the coastal areas where they have the requirement. Now, in addition to the standard design, our systems are now designed as what we came up with and coined a face seal barrier wall system. All of our systems being unitized, pre-assembled, pre-glazed, four-sided silicone structural glaze. We've designed and tested that our barrier, our face seal, which is our glass to sealant to surrounds or glass to sealant to glass, is done with no exposed metal to metal joinery. We saw in the industry that all the rain screen and the other systems had failures at the metal to metal joints. So we've done it, and we've tested all of Crawford-Tracey's systems are tested to 100 PSF water test. Okay, so everybody trying to get the 12 to 15 PSF water resistance, we've gone up to 100. As a matter of fact, when we did the flood barrier test, we had 7 foot, and then after the test was complete, we took it up to 10 foot of water with the unit at 24 hours in the pool and no leaks at all through the system. So it's tested and it does do it. We've got jobs in use with this design that have been there for 40 years with no touch-up modification, and they're still watertight.
It is, I mean, quite the testimonial to when you talk about just how robust it has to be. But then you say, well, people don't have to evacuate. And right there, that's such, I mean, a drastic advantage that they have. It's life-changing.
Right. Now, the one thing, though, Mitch, to your point, people ask me about that. I says, well, the fact of evacuating or not is a personal decision. I said, depending on the severity of the storm, we know that in some areas that even though it's not normally expected, it's not within a 100-year storm, conditions can and may exceed that. You talk about flood barrier. Well, they did a specific test under the 2510, but as you saw over from Hurricane Ian, in the areas near the marinas or the waterways, there were large vessels coming in over and across the land that were going through the poured concrete walls and going through the glazing. So when people ask me, it's like, having bullet resistant glass. Well, what if somebody's got a higher power, a stronger ballistic, or what have you? Just like explosion. Well, they're going to have a blast out on the outside. Now, I got blast resistant. I don't know. I think that's still considered, depending on what's out there, leaving the building.
Yeah, right. And it can stop the water from coming through, but it might not be able to stop the boat that's coming through.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have to ask a question. You said you guys service Puerto Rico, and in my head I'm going, it must be really hard to get your project managers to do a job site visit in Puerto Rico. That must be a hard ticket to sell.
No, actually, it's funny because at the start of the job, wow, I'm going down to Puerto Rico. Well, as the job's finishing up, it's like, oh, I got to go down there again. Now, it's nice, but when, just like anything, when you have to keep doing it, it gets old. But Puerto Rico is, you know, a beautiful place and to go visit. I love it. But when you have to keep going down there with all your other duties, it does become a challenge.
Of course. Yeah. Yeah. So one of the, I mean, big questions I have, Ray, is all this innovation over the years has obviously been a big focus. How has that helped you guys separate yourselves or endear yourselves to your customer base?
The big thing that the innovation and then the performance and then the timeliness. We make sure, number one, that we align ourselves with dependable, good suppliers. Even in COVID, with all the challenges, we were able to leverage our dedication to our providers, and we were now delivery times went out, but we were still able to get what a lot of people weren't able to get. But doing these things and providing specialty products that they can depend on. I have customers come in and say, geez, Ray, you installed this in my building 30 years ago and it still doesn't have a problem. That's one of the big testimonies. And they come back. We're not the cheapest, but we continue to evolve and provide them with what they need, what they want. The architects know at the onset, we've got glazing system. We had somebody come to us and they wanted to do a 30-foot unsupported single span glazing system with 8-foot mullion spacings. Hurricane impact. Was it on the shelf? No. So we went to the test lab. We designed it. Unlike some of the bigger organizations, myself and our team, we go, okay, what's our challenges? What's the engineering? What's the section modulus? What's the reinforcing? What is the glass that we're going to need to do this and do it? When the hurricane impact, we were the first to market and to comply and install hurricane impact systems, large and small missile. And we had, I remember a particular job out at a college that we were doing work on, and the contractor called me. We had worked with the architect, given him our system and designs, and the contractor reached out to me and says, Ray, can you send me your details? And I said, Mike, what do you need the details for? He goes, well, to be honest, your competition can't figure out how you're doing all this impact, and they need the details. And I go, Mike, I'm sorry, I'm not going to give that to you. We'll give you the details when the job's awarded and comes. So we were able to go to market, and then we saw cheap imitations and people finding out how we were doing it, and they started doing knockoffs or something similar, and the industry was born. And pretty much the same thing with the e-missile. The Floodberry, I know we've got a patent pending, but I know we're going to get people coming in now that we're doing it. Oh, that's how you do it. So it's been a big boost for us.
And that's actually an interesting question that I have, is just, how do you, because we sometimes see the same thing at Viricon. When you develop a new product, you get a good, couple year run out of it, and then everyone else tries to figure out the cheap imitation or the other ways of doing it, or figure out how you're doing it. Is there any way to prevent that? Probably
No.
not.
No. I mean, you can patent things and restrict some of the things, but what we do is, when we came to market, everybody was trying to test 4x8. We came straight in, hit the ground, and we passed with a 5x10. Okay, 10-foot and 12-foot was the heights they were trying to achieve. We started off with 14 feet. So we were doing 5-foot by 14-foot. And then as we went forward, everybody was wanting to do bigger. There's a commonality with all the designers and architects, that the thing they all have in common is they want to be different. Okay, so they want to do things bigger and better than everybody else. You see that now with the glass sizes. We were called in by an architect out of New York for a super custom residential project. They wanted us to do large pieces of fixed glass. This was 7-8 years ago. They wanted to do a window wall system that incorporated large 10.5-foot wide by 14.5-foot tall single lights with mullions between them in a facade on this residence. We ended up testing that, did a laminated, insulated, laminated component, passed the testing, brought it to market. They were looking to do it without impact protection. They were going to use a security screen, a armor screen in front of it to stop the flying projectiles. And I said, hey, I think we may be able to pass this in the large missile by using the laminated, insulated, laminated. And lo and behold, we passed it. Now, at the time, they only had a requirement of plus 55, minus 47. So the pressures were extremely low. So we tested only to their requirements because we didn't want to take a chance on a failure. So we did the job, but immediately got additional specimens, and we carried out continued testing, and we got those specimens up to 100 PSF for those large pieces of glass and the framing components. We were the initial glazing contractor on the Royal Caribbean World Headquarters down in Miami. Now that came to a big screeching stop from COVID, but we were able to test, and we were doing 20-foot tall by 5-foot 2-inch wide single pieces of glass with mullions between them on ribbon windows, and we did that to 126 PSF. We tested, we passed that, we got the project approval. The project stalled, and then Dade County got involved. They did a bond, and it's still in limbo and don't know what's going to go.
Yeah, that's massive. 126 PSF. That's pretty incredible.
You referenced that, you have been working on a lot of these developments, but then you also referenced you have a team. Do you have a dedicated team that's, their sole job is innovation and developing these new products?
Unfortunately, no, we do not. Our engineering team, we have a great engineering team that is capable of doing the calculations, engineering, and a vast knowledge of all of our four-sided structure blades. But we don't just sit there. We have regular meetings, and we go, you know what? Let's do this. We're working on a impact system now that has no mullions, which is already out there, but we want to do it with our four-sided top and bottom, and we're discussing taking that into flood also, but it's going to be getting pretty thick on the glass to do that. We're working and discussing that. We continue to go larger, and as the technology comes in, that the polymers and the laminate products and the glass manufacturers, well, Viracon has gotten into the jumbos now. Before that, we had to go to Agnora up in the northern area here, in the northern of the continent, and do that, or go to Europe. But then the cost, the freight, everything, it gets quite expensive. So as the manufacturers are increasing what they can do, we try and stay on the envelope or the outside of what can be done.
So that's interesting. So you've got, right now, some of the developments, obviously, that you're working on, we've got bigger sizes, always. You've got flood barrier. What else are you guys talking about? And I'm not asking for proprietary information, but what else is front of mind right now that you guys are trying to problem solve for?
The big thing is trying to find a way, number one, without compromising the quality, to introduce a more cost-effective cost. Every day gets more and more critical. When we do our testing, like on our 14-inch system at 30 foot and 8 foot wide, we got that up to 120 PSF, but we put a lot of steel in it. We're trying to take a look at the components where we can mitigate the amount or type or cost of the reinforcing or design of the mullions to cut down on the cost, innovative ways to erect and handle. We're working on different ways to maximize transportation right now. Freight is a big item, whether it's coming by boat or whether we're delivering it to the job site. And we're trying to maximize the amount of panels and components we can get onto a truck. We're doing the Key West International Airport. We're going down there, we're trying to get as much as we can, but we've got to watch it because there's load restrictions on the bridges down there. So We continue to have regular meetings. We talk to our field staff. We've been buying manipulators, different crane and hook arrangements to try and maximize the field erecting and the field performance of what we can do with our labor. Because as everybody knows right now, manpower is hard to get. Skilled manpower especially.
How that was one of the questions that I wanted to address is, how are you guys attempting to mitigate that manpower constriction?
Well, the big thing right now is we continue to advertise and do what we can, and we're trying to find ways, just like automated automobile production. We've gone more and more to CNCs and machinery, electronic, to do the fabrication on it. We're at a point now where the manpower in the fab, we can now put a lot of that out into the field, where it's a lot more difficult to use automation. You can't. There's too many safety factors, conditions that we require manpower. So we're just watching and having regular meetings to see how we can procure a better way to do it.
And those people you mentioned that you're always talking to the people in the field too, they have to have just boots on the ground knowledge of what they're seeing. It's cool that you guys bring them in and ask them as well.
Yes, very much so. We have our superintendent, we have our foreman, we have our group leaders, and we'll have stand downs and we'll talk with them and have ideas. We do budgets on jobs. When we get done, we'll debrief when we get done with the job. It's like, okay, I go out to the jobs. I've got our vice president of operations that goes out, and I push very hard. I mean, that's all we got this week was this many panels. Why? Okay, well, the wind was an issue. Well, wind becomes a safety issue that we can't compromise on. Quality control, if it's raining, well, safety and quality is a big problem. We can't be caulking out there, but we continue to meet and try and find ways to, again, without compromise to safety or quality control. We want to see how can we do better.
Yeah, that's great. It's just cool to see and hear how you guys are doing all that. Very innovative company, obviously, but just the fact that you guys are boots on the ground like that, it's really cool to see.
So what, you've been doing this a very long time, and so you have this wealth of knowledge that me and Mitch are hoping to have at some point. If you had, some key takeaways or one piece of advice to new people in the industry, what would that piece of advice be?
Well, just understand that, especially in today's marketplace, if you want to open or start your own company, number one, experience. Work for somebody else or work your way up through. It's funny, as I said earlier, my dad was just at the beginning, and this is a term of endearment. He was dumb. Okay, when I went to work with Crawford-Tracey, I came in there. Okay, where's my desk? My dad handed me a broom. Says, here it is. I started off, and I don't know why you're doing this. I'm smarter than this. But I started sweeping the floors, loading the trucks, cutting glass, fabricating frames. Then I went out into the field, and I had to install. And I was so frustrated because he didn't understand how smart I really was. But as I got my hands into it, and then later on, because I had basic experience in all aspects, even driving the trucks, getting them over there. I had a chauffeur's license. Whenever the truck driver couldn't do it, I would take the tractor trailer, the 18-wheeler, I would grab it, and I would make sure they could get to the job. I mean, people were kind of taken back when they saw, it's like, what are you doing driving the truck? It's like, well, we had to get it here. I told you it'd be here, and we're here. But experience is a big thing. And then you've got to have a passion and love for it. Because if you're expecting to just delegate everything and not be a leader, not be out in front of the charge, and not be involved in the daily design and show that you care, people aren't going to care. They're not going to follow up. Some people will, but the majority are only going to put into it what you do. It's more like follow the leader and show them and let them come up beside you, and expect that it's not going to be part of your life. It's going to be reasonably your whole life. So if you're expecting different than that and you want to be a big success, you're not going to do it, because it's not a part-time job.
Yeah, you guys are a very clear example of this is not a part-time job.
Yes.
You have to have that love for it. You're the first person that we've asked that question to that has said that, I believe, Mitchell. Like, you really do got to love this, and it's a unique industry that is kind of niche and not a lot of people know about it. And, the people in this industry do generally love glass.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. My wife, when we go out to restaurants or go to out of town to buildings, I'll say, wait, I'll walk around a building. I want to look at the glazing system. I say, look at this. This one leaks, and these are the problems. And she's over it now. We've been married for 35 years, but she still shakes her head.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, my wife does the same every time I go look at glass. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Well, unless you had something else, Ray, I was just going to thank you for your knowledge today and your time. This has been really fun for Matt and I.
Right. Well, one thing that we didn't touch on is in the item, and I'm sorry to digress here, but with the glass, Matt, you with Firicon and everything, and then your introduction and partnering with Halio is a big thing. It's the electrochromic, the shifting of the coatings on the glass. I know whenever it originally came out, it was a very slow process of changing the color or the tint and the performance. I know Halio has come out with, it takes like 2 minutes to change from no tint to full tint, which is immense. And we've seen out in the industry some of the problems with people that really don't think out some of the issues with pulling and chasing the pigtails and the wiring through the frame. So the incorporation of that will allow an immense mixed use of a building. At night, you can open it up where it's virtually clear, but yet during the day, you can take it way down, or that elevation of the area or that exposure by the computers, and you can tone it dark. And then as soon as the shade comes out or the sun goes behind the clouds, it can go back light. And if you've got a beautiful view, if you're on the ocean, even in condos, or hotels, it definitely offers a big energy savings with the versatility of providing good views. And at night, and one of the problems on the beach at night, depending if it's a dedicated turtle nesting zone, you've got to watch no greater than 45% light transmittance during the nesting time. But the other times you can open it wide open, and people can sit in the comfort of their air conditioning if that's what they want, and look out at the views. So it's a big thing. It's in its infancy, the electrochromic, but hopefully the cost can come down a little bit more. There's current government incentives that are very aggressive, that offer a very competitive edge on that, but that's coming to an end. If the government will extend that, that will allow a big increase in the efficiency and a carbon reduction, if nothing else.
Yeah, we just had a conversation about that carbon reduction last week. So everybody's focused on that. But the new technologies that are coming out around energy and around emission reduction, things of that nature, are really exciting for us to be in the glass world. There's a lot that's coming around the corner right now.
And I can imagine in your market, throughout your whole career, you've probably been trying to control solar heat gain and control visible light transmittance, and balance that with not just having 3 layers of gray glass that makes the views very dark, right? So an electrochromic option that can tint based on your lighting conditions would be probably the ideal product.
Yes, yes, it does offer it. We've had it where it's incorporated on certain elevations and not on others, but it does offer a big advantage for energy and aesthetics.
Absolutely. Now, Ray, what else do you have for us this morning? I'm curious if there's any other topics that, I mean, you want to dive into that you had for us that are out there, whatever you got.
Well, yeah, I'd rather be fishing, but you know, you can't do that.
So when does
Uh,
fishing season start?
Fishing season's all the time. As I'm working a little later in my years now, I'm trying to dedicate weekends and stay out of the office and do a little fishing or just on the water. You know, that's I'll call it occupational therapy.
Yeah. Yeah,
That's
you
great.
can work remote from the boat. There's nothing wrong with that.
No, you know, the funny thing was I got COVID back at the beginning, back 4 years ago or what it was. And I had it, but my wife didn't. So I had my boat down in Marathon. So I said, I'm going to drive down to Marathon. And I was down there for a week and a half on the boat, working remote, enjoying the views and the atmosphere. I just had to have plenty of food because I couldn't go to the grocery store or anything else. But it was that was a good opportunity.
Yeah.
I can't imagine a better place to social distance.
Yep.
Cool. Well, we hope you get back out on that water soon. Hopefully all that stuff gets taken care of for you on the boats.
Thank you.
Sounds good. Thanks so much for your time today.
Yeah, this was great, Ray. It was great to meet you and get to dive into this stuff.